took a man like Madiba to free not just the prisoner, but the jailer as well. To show that you must trust others so that they may trust you. To teach that reconciliation is not a matter of ignoring a cruel past, but a means of confronting it with inclusion and generosity and truth.
Hi, welcome to CNN Student News. You just heard President Obama speaking in Johannesburg yesterday, the event honoring former South African President Nelson Mandela. 3 things to know about Mandela's memorial service. 1, it was huge. It was held in a soccer stadium and attended by tens of thousands of people, street sweepers, actors, religious leaders, Mandela family members who spoke in between the cheers. 2, it was symbolic. This is the same stadium where Mandela himself spoke 23 years ago after he was released from prison. He'd been serving a life sentence for fighting South Africa's apartheid government. Mandela later became a symbol and advocate of human rights, and Tuesday's event coincided with UN Human Rights Day. 3, it was historic. 91 heads of state were there, a crowd of world leaders echoing attendance of Winston Churchill's funeral in 1965 or Pope John Paul II's in 2005. President Obama, former President George W. Bush, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton all traveled to South Africa on the same plane.
Air Force One is a very intimate setting, so that's a place where you can have quieter conversation. Once you get to one of these massive events, it's very hard to have real conversations.
These long flights, believe it or not, can forge friendships. In 1981, President Ronald Reagan could not attend the funeral of Egypt's Anwar Sadat, so he enlisted Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter to attend instead. The flight was said to be initially awkward and very long. But one notable friendship emerged, evident at Ford's funeral more than 25 years later, when Jimmy Carter eulogized his longtime friend.
For myself and for our nation, I want to thank my predecessor.
Fast forward to 1992, Bill Clinton and President George H.W. Bush were fighting a bitter presidential contest. But 7 years later, when they traveled together to attend the funeral of Jordan's King Hussein in 1999, that ice began to thaw. And now they're partners in philanthropy all over the world. Such a gathering of most or all living presidents is typically reserved only for monumental, usually sad events. The journey itself holds the potential for conflict and resolution on a first-class scale.
It's going to make a big difference in the atmospherics on Air Force One with George W. Bush there with his successor. That President Bush has been so reserved in making any negative comments. He's not second-guessing his successor, and I think that the Obama people really appreciate that.
This gang has seen more of each other than usual. In April, the group suited up to attend the dedication of the George W. Bush Presidential Library in Texas. Then in August, Clinton, Obama, and Carter joined forces to honor the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington.
No former president likes to be marginalized. They've always been the center of attention, and here we're going to have 3 formers and a current president. 4 centers of attention, that's a lot to juggle.
You're now looking at pictures of Mary Barra. She'll make history next year. On January 15th, she'll take over as the CEO of General Motors. Barra will be the first woman ever to lead an American car maker. It's an industry dominated by men. Women make up 21% of its total workforce. Barra has been part of it since she was 18 years old, working her way up over the past 3 decades. She was paid almost $5 million last year as an executive focused on design, engineering, and quality. A car research official says choosing a female CEO is a smart idea because most car buying decisions in the U.S. are made by women. GM's been profitable for several years, but has aggressive competition in the U.S. and challenges selling cars in Europe. At a place near the South Pole, satellites recorded a measurement of 135.8 degrees below zero. This happened in 2010, but was recently made public. It could be the coldest temperature ever recorded. But some scientists say it doesn't count because it was measured remotely by satellite and not by instruments on the ground. But what makes it so cold?
Here's the Antarctica story. There's the dome we're talking about, the middle of the South Pole right here, not that far from it, 135.8 negative Fahrenheit. How does it all happen? Well, if you have clouds, it acts like a blanket. and that cloud cover keeps the temperatures warmer. Antarctica didn't have a cloud cover that day. It cleared and all the heat went away. Just like taking the blanket off you at night when you're sleeping, you get cold. So the heat is released to space. All the cold air that was on top of the mountain has to go somewhere. It drains because of gravity, and it drained down into the hill, and as a satellite flew over it, took that measurement, it measured 135.
Well, you've seen it just about everywhere in public, what's often called the handicap symbol in parking lots, businesses, restaurants, and movie theaters. Is it time to change what's known around the world as the international symbol of accessibility?
It's a symbol that's been around since the late 60s, and many people recognize it right away. But Brian Glennie, a professor of philosophy, feels that times have changed, and so should the International Symbol of Accessibility, or ISA, that ubiquitous blue and white handicap icon.
We started to ask ourselves if we could bring about real change into how people perceive others with disabilities. Sarah heard about the project and she saw a more active symbol, what people commonly refer to as the handicap symbol. And I'm like, why isn't that everywhere? And we looked at each other and we're like, let's just do it. Let's just make our own.
And with that, Glennie, a former graffiti artist, and Sarah Hendren, a Harvard art student, came up with a new symbol, one they feel is more progressive.
This has been a real large complaint in the disability community that if you're in a chair, you get looked at as if you're not a person. She used a symbol that was leaning forward to represent kind of how active people are that use these accessible spots. There needed to be a change in the way that we symbolize people with disabilities, but also the way that we perceive them as people who are active and embodied and upwardly mobile in society.
Good afternoon.
The redesign implements ideas that separate the person from the chair.
The figure is leaning forward, one arm is back, and that's supposed to symbolically represent that is the future, that people with disabilities are just going to be moving forward into the job arena, into the school arena. There's going to be inclusion in secondary education and elementary school.
For many who are active in wheelchairs, like members of quad rugby team the New York Warriors, the change is long overdue.
Past symbol wasn't really anything good to look at, and it just kind of showed somebody who's in a chair who, they're not doing anything. And, that's one of the stereotypes that needs to be broken.
It shows that we're more just people sitting around doing nothing in a wheelchair. The new emblem just shows someone that's active, pushing forward. If not pushing forward in his chair himself, it's pushing forward in society.
It's just amazing how we've evolved from a public art project to what might be an international advocacy project in support of people with disabilities. Our symbols need to evolve in the same way that our words need to evolve.
Holly Furfer, CNN.
Though the new design is gaining acceptance, some critics say it's still showing a stick figure instead of a person and still showing a wheelchair when many people with disabilities don't use one. Celebrating our viewers from around the globe, it's Worldwide Wednesday on the CNN Student News Roll Call. We're starting in Wiesbaden Middle School, where the Wildcats are watching from Wiesbaden, Germany. Then we're heading east to Songlim High School in Seongnam City, South Korea. Their mascot is the pine. And we wrap up our roll call in Japan with our viewers from Tokyo Metropolitan Kokusai High School. Thank you all for watching. It's one of the sounds of the season, bells ringing in the air outside churches, houses, stores, and malls. 3 members of the Salvation Army, one in Texas, one in California, and one in Minnesota, decided they'd try to ring in a record, standing and chiming for 105 hours. For each of them, it meant going without sleep for 4 days. But on the plus side, it meant bringing in thousands of dollars for charity, an accomplishment they might not call unbelievable, but to say it took a lot of effort certainly rings true. And though people might not have showed up everywhere to clap, there is just no disputing this was a good chime. We'll be back tomorrow to ring in another edition of CNN Student News.